So in this little clip, I will demonstrate why imposing constraints on optimization problems will impose real economic costs. And we're going to look at two real-life examples here, both from the travel world. First, I'm thinking of flying to Athens, and we'll see how that works out. And second, I'm thinking of traveling from here, from Manchester to London, to the public lecture of the Royal Economic Society, which this year is given by Steve Macon, who's going to talk on the economic incentives for crime. Very interesting. So, of course, I want to go there. So let's start with the flight problem to Athens. You may know there are many online engines to find cheap flights. Here I looked at Opodo. Other search engines exist. So I want to go from Manchester to Athens. I just picked 2 dates. Just need to be careful I'm not missing one of my lectures. And let's search for flights. And here I have some flights. So if you go here, be careful. Firstly, I should perhaps say that, that was for one passenger only. If you see such a highlighted option, that's possibly sponsored to some degree. I'm not quite sure. It's certainly not the cheapest, so we'll ignore this. So let's see here. We have our cheapest option to fly for £382, one stop each, using Turkish airline. And then you can see there are all sorts of different options, almost at the same price. Swiss Air, then significantly more expensive Swiss again. So that's perhaps not so obvious just from here why that is. That may very well be different departure times that make one more expensive than the others. And then we go down, we have Air France, other airlines, but most of the options here seem to be Swiss and Turkish airlines. So why do constraints matter? I gave in 2 particular dates, Saturday the 28th, coming back Saturday the 4th of November. Now you can see here, if you are flexible on dates, you can save. The cheapest flight here is 382. However, if I was to fly from Friday to Friday rather than Saturday to Saturday, I could save money. That would be cheaper flights. So putting in the constraint of a particular day can be costly unless you, by accident or coincidentally, choose the day that is anyway the cheapest. So other options that may matter, for instance, there's a choice of connecting airports, and you can see clearly the cheapest flight is via Turkey. So if I was to rule out, if I said for some reason I don't want to fly via Turkey, then all of a sudden the cheapest options don't appear anymore. Okay, so that would be another constraint that is very costly. Whereas perhaps saying I don't want to fly via, let's go back, cheapest flight was 382. If I say I don't want to fly via Brussels, that'll make no difference because that wasn't a constraint. But ruling out Ankara Airport is an imposing constraint because the cheapest flight is going via Ankara. So you can see these were sort of 2 types of constraints: a particular date or ruling out particular airports that are costly. So what about going to the Royal Economic Society public lecture in London on the economic incentives of crime? So I'll go to Google and see what Google recommends. I'll travel from my office to the Royal Institution where the public lecture takes place on a particular date, on the 22nd of November 2017. So if you watch that later, don't travel. And you can see here there's an option, recommended travel mode, where Google gives recommendations. So it says, I should really take the train, and then I may have to take the tube in London as well. I can possibly walk to the train station in Manchester. Transpennine Express possibly asked me to walk to Oxford Road train station and then go to Piccadilly. There's another train, depending which one I want to take. I could also fly. It says train and walking takes just below 3 hours. Here it says flying 1 hour 15. Of course, that's the pure flight most likely. And it says, I'm not quite sure, connecting time. So I doubt it will only take me 1 hour 5 door to door. So it must be just a flight connection. So what about, so here we see just under 3 hours. What if I said, no, I want to travel by car? So that would be a restriction, because Google searched over all modes of traffic and recommends the train. If I want to go by car, you can see that it will take me typically at least 3 hours and 40 minutes. Okay, that possibly takes into account some traffic at the time which I indicated I would be traveling. So that is clearly a constraint. If you constrain the mode of traffic, that can impose a cost on you. Here in time, if I'm interested in time. Okay, in the flight example, I looked at money. And here I'm looking at time. You could, of course, look at money as well. What's the cheapest way to get there? I choose to look at time. Now, I quite like cycling. So what about cycling? Well, that is an even severer constraint. More than 18 hours. Actually, that would be 18 hours on the bike. I couldn't do that in one go. So, again, you can see here, if your problem is you want to minimize travel time, but you have certain constraints, then these constraints could be costly.